Welcome to our first Thursday Thoughts edition of the Consistency Corner podcast. So, as we head into 2024, I talked a little bit on last week's Friday episode that I am making a strategic shift with the podcast in that we're going to continue to have guest episodes on Mondays with marketing and mindset guest experts. And then on Fridays, we're shifting actually our Unfiltered Fridays episodes to Thursday to be a little bit more intentional with that content. Now, I loved the Unfiltered Fridays idea and I love the conversations that we had. And some of these Thursday episodes will continue to be a little bit unfiltered, very much like this one. But I wanted to get a little bit more intentional with our Thursday content. Now, first question you might have is like, well, who cares? Why are you moving from Friday to Thursday? Like, why does the day matter? Well, fun fact, in the podcast industry, the least number of downloads happen on a Friday. So being intentional, I realized I could do these episodes on Thursdays and it could potentially increase our reach. So using the data to kind of make that decision. So shifting from Unfiltered Friday to Thursday Thoughts, and Thursday Thoughts being more of a solo episode. Now, one of the reasons that I was having so many guests on Unfiltered Fridays when I decided to add a second podcast to the rotation and the schedule is because I am a generator in the human design world. And a generator is kind of like strategy in terms of decision making or like how to use your energy is to respond. I'm not a human design expert, so like don't quote me on that. In fact, there's an episode with my friend Allison Cullen from You Do Woo where she talks a lot about getting into human design. She's a great free resource if you're new to it. So definitely check her out if you want to learn more about human design. But all that to being said is as a generator, I often felt like because my strength and strategy is to respond, that in guest episodes, I was better because the conversation flowed. And like sometimes people would say something and I would just like respond with this thought and be like, wow, go me, I'm really smart. I mean, like, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I would sometimes even surprise myself with my response. And I often find that when I'm on other people's podcasts, I'll say things and be like, oh, I should talk about that on my podcast. But because there wasn't someone prompting me and asking those questions when I sit down to record, it's like that staring at a blank cursor. And so you're kind of like, oh, I forgot what I was going to say, or what did I say that time? And maybe you've experienced that too. But the Unfiltered Fridays episodes, as much as I love them, to be honest, they were not supporting my business goals. And we talk about marketing and content as much as downloads in the podcast world could be helpful. And my downloads were growing as I added a second episode every single week. I mean, continued month over month to increase my number of downloads. I wasn't gaining any clients from that. And at the end of the day, when I think about my podcast, and I want you to do this too for any long form content container that you have, is you want to ask yourself, what is the job of this platform? And so I thought about it and I thought the job of my podcast is to nurture my audience and add value for both new clients and potential existing clients and my community so that if and when someone's ready to work with me, they've gotten to know me and know what it's like to work with me. So with that being said, I realized that these Unfiltered Fridays conversations that we were having sometimes about like mom life and the behind the scenes struggles of an entrepreneur, and some of those things were not helping my client move through that customer journey. And that's not to say like I won't ever talk about those things here. I will, because that's who I am as a person. And that's a lot of the times conversations I'm even having with my clients in real life. But it wasn't helping my business goals. And so I realized that I needed to be a little bit more strategic with these solo episodes and intentional. So hence the pivot from Unfiltered Fridays to Thursday Thoughts. Also love alliteration, people. So that's why we've got Thursday Thoughts going on here. But I've got kind of a idea for different types of episodes that we'll do on Thursdays, and we'll rotate through sharing strategic shifts, doing sort of like a pep talk or a perspective shift, which that'll be a little bit more of the like unfiltered behind the scenes entrepreneur life or mom life conversations. And you guys know, I mean, I am huge in the personal development space, regularly work with a mentor. I'm regularly reading personal development and professional development books and working on those things and love talking about them. One of the core brand values for the Consistency Corner is to lead with a growth mindset. So as I have perspective shifts and ahas, I, want to come on here on the podcast and talk about those with you and how that can maybe support you in your marketing journey or your journey as a leader and an entrepreneur. And then finally doing some team spotlight or community spotlight where we'll talk a little bit more about the team that works behind the scenes at the Consistency Corner. And a goal of mine is to grow that team this year and add to our support team that supports our clients and that creates content behind the scenes. But then also like my team in terms of who supports me as an entrepreneur, because I have a virtual assistant, I have a bookkeeper, I have a mentor, and a lot of other people that I, work with on projects and things like that, that I outsource to, because let me tell y'all, we know this, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And your girl over here definitely cannot do everything. I'm spending a lot of time this week as I'm recording this going into the new year, mapping out my time, mapping out my tasks, mapping out my priorities. And to be totally honest and transparent, getting a little overwhelmed and feeling a little overwhelmed. And I think some of my clients go through that too. We think, oh, sure, I'll just post on Instagram 3 times a week. But no problem. I'll just post on LinkedIn 3 times a week. It's no big deal. But then let me also go ahead and make sure that I'm writing an email every single week. And I want to do a blog every single month. And let's start a podcast. And hey, shouldn't we start posting on Pinterest? And also, I want to make sure that I'm going to that networking group every other week. But then there's a new networking group that I just wanted to join. But also I've got to follow up with those other people. And then all of that while you serve your existing clients, manage your team, try to eat food, drink water, exercise, and give yourself white space and rest. And it's a lot. It can be a lot. So I'm in a season of evolving my business. And as we talk about these strategic shifts, evolving my business into more of a done for you service container versus coaching and strategy. Now, I still offer coaching and strategy and actually do have some containers where you can book a strategy session, where you can get you can have me work as your director of marketing for 3 months, where I'll give you a strategic marketing and content plan for you and your team to implement. So that way it's like, Ruthie, you tell me what to do. I'm just going to go do it. But it takes that like guesswork and that decision-making piece off of your to-do list. And then for my retainer clients, really serving as that full service marketing agency where we do it all for you. You just, pop in and give feedback and we ideate together or collaborate. But all that to be said, as I talk to clients, particularly in that like done with you space, we always think we can do more than we can actually do, or many of us do. So I want to remind you as you sit down and think about your marketing strategy in the attract and the nurture and the convert phases. And we talked about this kind of at the end of November in a couple of episodes on planning your marketing strategy and content. Really think about an intensity you can be consistent with. And so that's one of the things that I'm doing this week is mapping that out and then figuring out where I need additional support and where I can add support as I continue to grow the business and evolve the brand. And talking about strategic shifts, I'll share a little bit behind the scenes here, but we are working on the season 3 glow up of the Consistency Corner, in that I've hired a copywriter who I admire and have wanted to work with for a long time to rewrite my homepage and help me streamline and redefine how I support clients in a full service, holistic marketing capacity, serving as your director of marketing and then my team implementing the actual content and strategy that we come up with together. But finding the language and the copy to talk about that effectively, and then working on the glow up to the brand. As a brand, I would not call myself a brand designer. I did have a graphic designer who I respect a lot help me with my logo, but that's kind of where we stopped. And at the end of the day, a logo in and of itself is not a brand. It's like one little piece of the branding puzzle. And so I'm ready to get really streamlined and intentional and consistent in the branding details. And so I'm doing a lot of behind the scenes work right now on who is my ideal client? What problems do I solve for them? What makes the Consistency Corner unique? How do we help? What's the through line of all of our offers? What's our really brand promise? And that work is not like, I'm going to sit down and knock this out in 30 minutes between calls kind of work. That's work that's like, let me ideate on this. Let me sit and write for an hour. But now I'm going to step away from everything that I wrote and let that marinate. I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to answer some other questions. I'm going to work with someone who can be looking from the outside looking in and maybe can see things that I can't see, so that we can clarify and get really laser focused on that branding. And then we can take that branding out to the market and consistently share that intentional message in order to make our mark and help us make an impact with those ideal clients and an income ultimately. So behind the scenes, that's what's happening over here. We are in the middle of, or really just the beginning stages of, the season 3 brand glow up, or a brand evolution. And it's so funny because I've talked a little bit about word of the year on Instagram stories, and I shared in last week's episode that I hadn't yet decided on my word of the year, and I'm still not ready to fully commit. I've narrowed it down to either evolve or focus. And evolve really being because the brand is evolving. The offers are evolving, and I'm ready to step into that evolution and get really, again, clear on what we're evolving into, and then get consistent with that new version of the brand. But then also considering focus, because as the CEO, I know that I've got to focus. I know that I've got to get my messaging focused on the right things and in the right places. And as a human who is self-diagnosed, struggling with ADHD, I've got to focus my energy. I've got to figure out systems that help my brain focus, that help me do the most focused creative work in flow without having to worry about the 87 other tabs I have open and the 129 to-dos on my to-do list. Like, this is another unfiltered thought that I'll share with y'all. Like, I'm literally trying to figure out task management. I've tried ClickUp. I've tried a Google Doc. I've tried pen and paper. I'm right now in a Google Sheet, and none of it is working because it all just takes up so much capacity in my brain. And as we are going through this season 3 glow up, and I'm needing that creative capacity to really think about the next iteration of the brand and how we'll serve our clients and what we, will need to do in order to fulfill that vision I have for this brand to support women in having a flexible work environment. I need some brain capacity, and all those to-dos floating around that need to get done. I got to figure out a place to put them and a system that helps me get them done on time and manage those deadlines and capacity. So still working on that. If you have a favorite system, please let me know and how you worked for you. I think one of the problems for me is it's not so much using a system, it's setting up the system that becomes overwhelming. So I am working behind the scenes with my VA in the back end, and we're going to talk about ClickUp again after I brain dump a bunch of stuff on paper, but it's a lot going on in my brain right now. And that's something that I actually see with a lot of the CEOs that I work with. You have so much going on in your brain in terms of managing your team, growing the business, strategic, investments, and serving your clients. And the brand has grown to so much more than just you, that you've got to get some things off of your plate so that you have that creative capacity. And that's why outsourcing marketing can be a great first step. But when it's like, okay, what if I want to bring an in-house person? Well, that one person can't do it all. They're going to need support as well. And that's where working with an agency can be really helpful, because with an agency, you can get director level or even C-suite level expertise leading the strategy and leading the project so that you as a CEO don't have to think about it. And then there's a team working with them with defined processes, defined systems, ways they do things, and a team of expertise that you probably wouldn't be able to bring in-house all of those people. So just a thought for if you're starting to think about outsourcing your marketing, if you're kind of piecemealing it right now, you and your internal team are trying to do it, but nobody really has the time or the desire or the capacity to do it well, it might be time to start thinking about agency support. So that's a little bit of a recap in where we're shifting this year in 2024 and the strategic shifts that I'm making behind the scenes. And like I said, on Thursdays, we'll rotate these episodes through strategic shifts, pep talks, and perspectives, or client and community spotlights to talk more about some of the work we're actually doing, ways we've helped clients, ways we help on previous projects, or things that we're kind of working on adding, and some other fun guests that I've got planned for you. So thank you so much for being here on the Consistency Corner podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.